Sab avatar Shar Shiramani Kevala Ananda Kanda
Sab avatar Shiromani Kevala
Bhaj Bhaj Bhai Chaitanya Nitai Shuddha Vishwas Kori
Bhaja
Shuddha Vishwas Kori Vishaya Chadiya Sera se Majiya Mukhe Bolo Hari Hari
Dishaya Chadiya Sera Samajya Mukhe Bolo Hari Hari
Dekha Ore Bhai Tribhuvane Nai Emona Doyalo Data
Deko Abhipai Tribhuvanenai Emona Dayaladata
Pashu Paki Jure Pashana Vidare Shuni Jar Gunagata
Ashupakihare Ashana Vitare Sunijan Ragunagata
Sangsara Majiya Rohili Podia Sepode Nohilo Asha
Samsara Majiya Rohili Podiya Sepada Nahilo Asha
Apana Koroma Bunjaye Shamana Kohoye Lochana Dasa
Apana Karama Bunjaya Samana Kohoye Lochana Dasa
Parama Karuna Pahudvijan Nitai Gaurachandra
Paramakaruna Bahudvijam Nitai Gaurachandra
Shab Avatar Shar Shiramani Kevala Ananda Kanda
Sababatara Shrimani Kevala Ananda Kanda
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribrajaka Ashtotara Sata Shishrimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Ananta Koti Vaishnavrind ki jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadvip Mayapur Dham ki jai. Ganga Mai ki jai. Jamuna Mai ki jai. Tulsi Maharani ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
All glory to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga Hari Hari Bol. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane. Namaste Sarasate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya
Shri
Sri
Chaitanya
Chaitanya
Jaya
Jai
Nityananda.
Nityananda
Jai Dvaita Chandra Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya
Advaita
Datta Chandra
Chandra
Jaya
Gaur
Gaur
Bhakta
Bhakta
Vrinda.
Bhakta
Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda.
Jaya
Jai
Jaya
Jai Sri
Sri Chaitanya
Chaitanya Jaya
Jaya
Nityananda.
Nityananda
Jai Dvaita Chandra Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Jai
Jaya
Advaita
Datta Chandra
Chandra Jaya
Jaya
Gaur
Gaur
Bhakta
Bhakta
Vrinda.
Vrinda
Bhrinda
Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya
Jai
Jai
Jaya
Jai
Sri
Sri
Shri
Chaitanya
Chaitanya
Jaya
Jaya
Nityananda
Nityananda.
Nityananda
Jai Dvaita Chandra Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Datta Chandra Jaya
Jai
Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
We're reading from the Sri Caitanya Caritamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 20, text number, is it 160?
159.
Oh, 59, okay. That's in Bengali then.
ব্রহ্ম অঙ্গকান্তি তার নির্বিশেষ প্রকাশে সূর্য যেন চর্ম চক্ষে জ্যোতির্ময় ভাসে।
The manifestation of the impersonal Brahman effulgence, which is without variety, is the rays of Krishna's bodily effulgence. It is exactly like the sun. When the sun is seen by our ordinary eyes, it simply appears to consist of effulgence. Text 160. Yasya prabha prabhavato jagadanda kotishvashesha vasudhari vibhuti bhinnam tad brahma nishkalam anantam ashesha bhutam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Translation: I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is endowed with great power. The glowing effulgence of his transcendental form is the impersonal Brahman, which is absolute, complete, and unlimited, and which displays the varieties of countless planets with their different opulences in millions and millions of universes. Purport: this verse is quoted from the Brahma Samhita, 5th chapter, 40th verse. For an explanation, refer to Adi Lila, chapter 2, verse number 14. So should we go there? Sure, why not? Adi Lila, chapter 2, verse 14. Purport: this verse appears in the Brahma Samhita, 540. Each and every one of the countless universes is full of innumerable planets with different constitutions and atmospheres. All these come from the unlimited non-dual Brahman, or complete whole, which exists in absolute knowledge. The origin of that unlimited Brahman effulgence is the transcendental body of Govinda, who is offered respectful obeisances as the original and supreme personality of Godhead. And there's a purport also by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in the book Brahma Samhita, which some of you might have. The mundane universe created by Maya is one of the infinite external manifestations accompanying space, time, and gross things. The impersonal aspect of Godhead, the non-differentiated Brahman, is far above this principle of mundane creation. But even the non-differentiated Brahman is only the external effulgence emanating from the boundary wall of the transcendental realm of Vaikuntha, displaying the tri-quadrantal glory of Govinda. The non-differentiated Brahman is indivisible, hence it is also one without a second and is the infinite and residual entity. Questions or comments here? No? So this Caitanya Caritamrita, go ahead, yes.
I do not all understand. Can you say like in a simplified version, please?
That's as pretty straightforward as I can get. I mean, so the basis of all the universes, and within those universes, there's all different kinds of planets, and each planet there's different atmospheres with different kinds of living entities. They're all being sustained in the Brahma Jyoti, which is the effulgence of Lord Krishna. So,
Okay.
Caitanya Caritamrita, you know, Srila Prabhupada would say that Bhagavad Gita is the basis, and the graduate study of Bhagavad Gita is what's that?
Bhagavatam.
Srimad Bhagavatam, yeah. And then postgraduate study is
Caitanya Caritamrita.
yeah, Caitanya Caritamrita. So we're getting into a portion of the Caitanya Caritamrita which will be very elevated. There's different. We've already gone through some, but this will be one, because it'll be Lord Chaitanya will be describing all the different incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the different and categorizing them according to different names and functions. So this you won't find in Bhagavad Gita, although it's mentioned yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. This is mentioned, but then the details are described to some extent in Srimad Bhagavatam, but very scrutinizingly described in this Caitanya Caritamrita. So we're going to have to hold on to our hats here, so to speak, because this will be a very high information. So we just were going through the Lord Chaitanya was talking about the three aspects of the Supreme Personality of Godhead: Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, and Bhagavaniti Shabdyate. Brahmeti is this Brahmin effulgence. Next, he's going to describe the Paramatma feature, but the last word in understanding God is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. So Srila, it was Golokananda Priya. I don't know if she's here today.
I am here.
Oh, good. Hare Krishna. She asked a nice question last week, which I briefly answered, but she asked, how is it that many of the religions, so many there, they have this impersonal aspect or a personal function or influence? And I, in addition to what I said last week, it's because, that's how dharmasya glanir. Dharmasya glanir means the religion becomes polluted over time. So one of the first pollutions that we get is the impersonal aspect, because As soon as God is not a person, then we don't have to worry so much about doing devotional service, or our devotional service becomes more ritualistic. So if we accept that God is an imperson or just a principle, then it's not really that important that if he's a person, you need to please him. But if he's not a person, then we're just going through the motions of bhakti, of devotional service, for some other, for your own self-purification or something like that, but not really with an attitude and a focus of pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this we see it sometimes in our ISKCON also, that this attitude happens, just going through the motions without actually concerning ourselves in pleasing Lord Krishna. Even early on in the movement, Srila Prabhupada was sometimes people take objection because Srila Prabhupada was so strong at defeating the impersonal philosophy, and they object to that because sometimes it's thought that a sadhu shouldn't be very critical, but the law is that if you don't object to something, you're agreeing. Have you heard that? Yes. A good example of that is in the 16th century. There was a king of England in the early 16th century. His name was King Henry VIII. Some of you are familiar with King Henry VIII, if you know British history. So anyway, he had a minister by the name of Thomas More, St. Thomas More. And incidentally, when the Protestant Reformation came, the Reformation was a reaction or a reformation against the attitudes and practices of the Catholic Church. So King Henry VIII, with the assistance, primarily of the assistance of Thomas More, wrote a rebuttal to the arguments of the Reformation. And because of that, he got given a special name as protector of the faith, which to this day the kings of England retain. They're considered the protectors of the faith because of King Henry VIII's defense of Catholicism against the Reformation. But just shortly thereafter, he wanted to divorce his first wife and marry a different wife, which was against, and he approached the Pope in order to get permission, but the Pope didn't give it. So he became a little disturbed, and he then rejected Catholicism and made the Anglican view. So anyway, he wanted the support of his minister, his chief minister, Thomas More, but Thomas More was here caught in a very difficult situation because on one hand, he was trying to support the Pope, the Catholics, and the other hand, his king was Henry VIII, who wanted to marry a different wife. So he chose to become silent. He didn't say anything. He didn't encourage, and he didn't criticize. So anyway, he was put on trial anyway. But that was his argument. In law, if you don't object when something, then that's agreement. So similarly, in the generally speaking, when people think of Hindu religion, usually they have an idea of an impersonal view of God. That the body, when God comes to this world, he takes on a material body. And there are many different types of material bodies that God might take, according to different times, place, and circumstances. But the form of God is a creation of Maya and is not to be worshipped. So, for example, there was one very famous person who labeled himself a Ram Bhakta. Ram Bhakta. And when he would give lectures all over the world, they would be attended by tens and tens of thousands of people. But he would start his lecture saying, take any Param Shakti. It doesn't matter. Ram, Shiva, Durga, Ganesh. But he would advertise himself as a Bhakta. So actually, in the guise of devotional service, this is impersonalism or Mayavad. So Srila Prabhupada used to really push on this point. And sometimes it's true that people who advertise themselves as being devotion or devotees or advocating devotion are really Mayavadi or impersonalists in disguise. So Srila Prabhupada used to go on morning walks, as you know, and in Mumbai, there's a Juhu beach there, not close by, and there was a man named Dr. Patel who used to often come along with Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada would get in debates with him oftentimes, and he would claim that he was a Vaishnava, and but devotees were thinking he's not really. He tends to be an impersonalist. So one time, Srila Prabhupada was pointing out the defects, as Krishna does in Bhagavad Gita, the defects of a particular respected Paramahamsa, and immediately Dr. Patel became enraged. And although he claimed he was a Vaishnava, a devotee. So devotees afterwards asked him, well, I mean, here's this Dr. Patel, is he a Vaishnav or is he an impersonalist? So Srila Prabhupada told a very interesting story. He said, there was a man who, for whatever reason, wouldn't tell his associates what country was his native place of birth. So, because he spoke equally well in a variety of languages, with, in every language he knew the vocabulary quite extensively. His grammar was perfect, and his accent was also impeccable. So nobody could figure out what was his place of birth, what country and language was his original native language. So then one man came and said, I know how to do it. I'll find out. So the next day when they were together, all of them, that man who said who volunteered, he came up behind him and gave a little slap from behind. And immediately the man of many languages began to curse native language. So he gave that as an example. When some of you push, then the real beliefs come out. That's how it is. So here, even in ISKCON, in these early days, the influence of Mayavad philosophy was very strong. This is from memories of Umapati Swami, who was there. Some of you know there's Kirtanananda was one of the early disciples, and then Hayagriva, who was the first editor of Bhagavad Gita. The Umapadis, they were all roommates living near the 26 Second Avenue Temple. Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is hadn't been published yet. So Prabhupada read from the Bhagavad Gita by Dr. Radha Krishnan, the former president of India. Prabhupada said that Dr. Radha Krishnan was an impersonalist. But we didn't know what that meant until one morning when Prabhupada said, today I will show you that Dr. Radha Krishnan is an impersonalist. and he had Roy read chapter 9, verse 34. Always think of me, become my devotee. Prabhupada said, now read the commentary. Roy read, when Krishna says, unto me, it is not Krishna to whom we should surrender, but to the unborn eternal within Krishna. Prabhupada said, you see, that proves he is an impersonalist. Nobody understood. What Dr. Radha Krishna had written sounded okay to everybody, except Prabhupada. Kirtanananda said, Dr. Radha Krishnan is right. And he gave a long speech about the unborn eternal within Krishna. Prabhupada started to turn red while Kirtanananda talked. I thought, for the first time, I understand what it means to say somebody turned red. I had never seen anybody turn so red. As Kirtanananda spoke, Prabhupada got redder and redder. And when Kirtanananda stopped, Prabhupada said, are you finished? And Kirtanananda said, no, and continued speaking. When he finally stopped again, Prabhupada said, are you finished? He said, yes. Prabhupada stood up, slammed his hand down and said, it's Krishna, it's Krishna. There is no difference between Krishna's mind and Krishna. Krishna is not an ordinary human being. He is the absolute truth. His body, his mind, and he himself are one and absolute. There is no difference between Krishna himself and his body. I had never seen anything so magnificent. Prabhupada was like a roaring lion. I could almost feel the room shake. Then we understood impersonalism. Srila Prabhupada saved us on that day. So those are some comments. Comments and questions? No?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, convert now.
Yes.
Prabhuji, one word I was not able to get this triquadratal. So triquadratal glories of Govinda. Is it referring to Prabhuji Goloka and is it kind of that? I was
Yes.
trying to understand why it is a triquadratal, uniquadratal.
Yeah. That's described earlier in the Brahma Samhita. Do you have that book, Brahma Samhita?
I have that PDF. I mean,
okay. Yeah. So earlier, in the earlier part, after the invocation, Ishvara Param Krishna Sachit Ananda Vigraha, then Lord Brahma is meditating on Goloka. And he describes Goloka in that way. There's different directions and different entrances to Goloka that are described there. So if you look there, you'll find a more complete explanation.
Okay, sure, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Sure. So next verse. What is that? It's probably in Bengali, next verse.
Yes. Paramatta jeho teho Krishner ek angsho, attar atta hoy Krishna sarbo avatamsho.
The Paramatma, the supersoul feature, is the partial plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the original source of all living entities. It is also Krishna, who is the original source of Paramatma. Krishnam enam avehi tvam atmanam akilatmanam jagadhitaya sopyatra dehavabhati mayaya. You should know that Krishna, as the original soul of all atmas, living entities, for the benefit of the whole universe, he has, out of his causeless mercy, appeared as an ordinary human being. He has done this with the strength of his own internal potency. Purport. This is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 14th chapter, 55th verse. Parikshit Maharaj asked Shukadev Goswami why Krishna was so beloved by the residents of Vrindavan, who loved him even more than their own offspring or life itself. At that time, Shukadev Goswami replied that everyone's Atma or soul is very, very dear, especially to living entities who have accepted material bodies. However, that Atma, the spirit soul, is part and parcel of Krishna. For this reason, Krishna is very dear to every living entity. Everyone's body is very dear to oneself, and if one wants to protect the body, by all means, within the body, the soul is living. Due to the intimate relationship between the soul and the body is important and dear to everyone. You're following? Yeah. So we're attached to this body because inside the body is the soul. Without the soul, then we're not so much interested in the body. And the next step is there's so much interest in the soul because it's part of the most attractive soul, part and parcel of the most attractive soul, Krishna. So this is Shukadeva Goswami is explaining this. Similarly, the soul, being part and parcel of Krishna, the Supreme Lord, is very, very dear to all living entities. Unfortunately, the soul forgets his constitutional position and thinks he is only the body, Deha Atmi Buddhi. Thus, the soul is subjected to the rules and regulations of material nature. When a living entity, by his intelligence, reawakens his attraction for Krishna, he can understand that he is not the body, but part and parcel of Krishna. Thus, filled with knowledge, he no longer labors under attachment to the body and everything related to the body. Janasya mohoyam ahammameti. Material existence, wherein one thinks, I am the body and this belongs to me, is also illusory. One must redirect his attraction to Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam states, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janiyatu Ashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayad Ahaitukam. By rendering devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless mercy, causeless knowledge, and detachment from the world. Nice verse. You know this verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Vasudeve Bhagavati, unto the Supreme Lord Vasudeva, Bhakti Yoga Prayojita, by performing Bhakti Yoga. Janiyatu means very quickly. Jani is born, Ashu is very quickly. Vairagyam, Vairagya, renunciation. Jnanam, knowledge. Ahaitukam, causelessly. Yeah. Do you know where this incident that triggered Shukadev Goswami to speak about this, giving this example of Krishna, the soul being there and the body being important because of the presence of the soul, and the soul being attractive because it's part and parcel of Krishna? You know where this comes from? Srimad Bhagavatam? Yeah. So, oh, is this too low? Is the
No, we can hear you.
You can hear?
We can,
okay.
yes.
Somebody's okay. So this was during the time when the Lord Krishna and the cowherd boys, this was prior to the age of 6, when they were herding the calves in Vrindavan, and they went out early. So they after some time, they sat down on the bank of Jamuna, and they were taking their lunch. They had brought some lunch with them by their mothers. And some of the calves had wandered away, little calves. And so the cowherd boys became a little anxious. So Lord Krishna said, don't worry, I'll go get them. You can continue with your meal. So as when Krishna left, what had actually happened was Lord Brahma, who was a little bit confused, even though he had spoken the Brahma Samhita just, not long before, recognizing Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He got a little bit confused because how can this little tiny boy be the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Not only the little tiny boy, but a little tiny cowherd boy. I was born in Indiana, and in Indiana, sometimes people from Chicago would come down and they would say, "You Indiana farmers," there's a lot of corn farms in Indiana, which was a criticism because farmers are usually not considered very smart. So here, not only was Lord Krishna a small little boy, but he was the cowherd boy in the Vaishya community. Yeah. So Lord Brahma was a little confused, and he wanted to see, was this really Krishna? Is this really the Supreme Personality of Godhead? So he kidnapped all the calves and cowherd boys. So what did Krishna do? Lord Krishna immediately expanded himself into all those calves and cowherd boys. There were thousands and thousands of each of them. So that when those cowherd boys went home to their mothers, they looked exactly the same, except they were not the same boys. They were Krishna. They were expansions of Krishna. And the calves went to their mother cows, and now they looked exactly like the calves that were there, but they were now expansions of Krishna. So this is an amazing thing. So then when Balaram saw the affection of the cows for their calves, it was he said, how is this possible that their affection has grown so much? So Shukadeva Goswami said that's because these calves and cowherd boys, they're now expansions of Krishna, and Krishna is the ultimate lovable object for everyone. So anyway, that's where this comes from. Comments, questions? Okay. Text 163. Atava bahunaitena kim gyatena tu varjuna vishtabhyaham idam kritsnam ekankshena stito jagat. But what need is there, Arjuna, of all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. This is from Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter, 42nd verse. Text 164.
ভক্তে ভগবানের অনুভব পূর্ণরূপ, একই বিগ্রহে তার অনন্ত স্বরূপ।
Only by devotional activity can one understand the transcendental form of the Lord, which is perfect in all respects. Although his form is one can expand. He can expand his form into unlimited numbers by his supreme will. So that's what we're going to talk. We're going to talk about that next. All the different categories of expansions of Lord Krishna that we'll come up with. I'd like to. We're going to stop the Caitanya Caritamrita here, and just a comment that Sue Devi, are you there? I think, is Sue Devi there? Well, anyway, she asked a good question on Sunday. Yes?
Yes, I'm here, Prabhu. The whole
Okay.
mute and mute takes some time to do.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, you asked a good question on Sunday, and I'd just like to talk a little bit more about it because so I gave the example of the wedding party and how unless we pull up the certain of our attachments, then our progress in spiritual life is doesn't come. So, and then you mentioned, well, usually we say just by hearing and chanting, then all the anarthas in the heart become cleansed. So how is that? So of course the verse in the Bhagavatam is Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata. That they get they almost to nil. So there's a little bit remaining. But so Lord Chaitanya gives the example of a gardener, and in a garden, you'll water the seedlings, but another thing has to happen when in a garden. What's the other thing that has to happen?
Water.
More than water. Again,
Sunshine.
in addition to water.
Sunshine.
What's that?
Sunlight.
Sunshine.
It's a wind.
Yes. You have to pull the weeds, because when you water, the plant that you want to grow, the bhakti lata in this case, will grow, but also some weeds will grow. So unless the weeds are pulled, they can choke the growth of the plant. So hearing and chanting gives us the strength to do that, but still there is some effort that we must make to locate and pull out those weeds. Therefore, one of the offenses of chanting Hare Krishna is to maintain material attachments, while chanting, even though understanding so many instructions in this matter. You follow? So, for example, there was the example of Bharat. So he had achieved a very high level of Krishna consciousness. It's in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it says that Bharat Maharaj, he was on the level of, bhava, but he became overly affectionate to a little deer. And by that, even though being affectionate to a deer is not like a sinful activity, but it distracted his Krishna consciousness, and it delayed his progress back to Godhead. So anyway, these are kind of some additional things about that. What do you say?
Prabhu, I have a question.
Yes.
You are talking about Krishna expanded himself into so many coward boys and cows and everything. Was it Vishnu form or just Krishna, original Krishna?
Good question. When Lord Brahma came back to find out what Krishna, what was going on, he saw them all as Vishnu forms, four-headed Vishnu forms. You're right. So which is also an expansion of Krishna. Anybody else? Thank you very much for your time.
Vishnugada Prabhu.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. The last verse that was read, it didn't have a purport, but it said that one can only know the transcendental form of Lord Krishna through devotional service.
Yeah.
Some may argue that they could, use the process of reasoning to try to understand, or philosophy to try to understand. How would we respond to something like that? Or somebody says, how through devotional service one could actually understand the transcendental form of the Lord?
Well, if you want to see a great personality, say you wanted to see President Trump, then you'd have to accept his method to see him. If you want to go see him at the White House, directly without an appointment or without his permission, then you're going to have a lot of problems. You'd probably be arrested and put in some jail incognito for many years. But so we have to accept what is Krishna doesn't show himself to everybody. He allows. He has his method if you want to know him, to see him, and so he said it like that. Bhaktya mam abhijanati. So if it's true even for a great person in this world, what to speak of the greatest person, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he says it repeatedly.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Sure.
I have a question.
Prabhu,
Hare Krishna.
Sorry, go ahead.
Was
I can't hear. I don't hear. So I don't. Whoop.
Yeah, I
think-
couldn't hear either.
I think they're having connection
It got
problems.
broken up.
Oh, okay. Some other questions?
Sita Prabhu?
Yes, I had a question, Prabhuji, somewhat related, to attachment when you just said. Why is it that we feel more in distress? When you have a friend and you have your kids and you have it's you like them and you love them, but they're there and it's okay. But when they leave you, the pain is 1,000 times more. Why is it?
1,000 times more than what?
Like when you're there, it's like when you have everyone around you and they're living, then the love is there and the care is there and everything is there, but it definitely becomes a whole lot more when they leave you. And why is that we feel the pain so much more when someone leaves you, and you realize and you recognize how much you cared a whole lot more when they leave you, but when they're with you, you still care for them, but it's not that intense.
So if I can understand your question, that means when people leave, then or leave or die, that you get more disturbed and you realize their your attachment more at that time. That's why we say in the Krishna conscious, Lord Chaitanya was teaching Vipralamba Bhava. Vipralamba Bhava means we feel Krishna's presence more when in separation. And separation from everybody else is just a reflection of our original separation from Krishna, which is a catastrophe for all of us. So it helps us to remember that. That's my take on it. Anyone else would like to comment on that?
In response to that, is that kind of like when the gopis, they felt that separation from him more intensely when he went to Mathura, and so
yes.
it was kind of like, when they were there, they were just all, lovingly playing. When he left, they were just so pining for him more so than when he was there.
Yes. Now, it doesn't mean that those other people are Krishna that we're missing, but as Shukadeva Goswami was explaining to Parikshit Maharaj, that the reason that they're so dear is because they're part and parcel of Krishna, and it reflects our original sadness at being separated from Krishna. So that can be an impetus for becoming more Krishna conscious.
Oh, Prabhu, how do you get over this sadness and this separation from other living entities? How do you get over by?
Well, that was Arjuna's question to Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, because he knew that he was going to have to kill those people on the opposing side. It was not that it was just going to be a jousting match and there was going to be somebody declared a winner, but he would have to kill his grandfather, his teacher. So Krishna told him that he had to tolerate that. Can you ever get over? That's the tolerance. It's not very easy, but it's possible by Krishna consciousness. How does it get? Anybody else could add? Yudhishthira at the end of the war at the end of the battle, he was overwhelmed with lamentation, and you know he didn't want the kingdom, even though the whole battle was fought so that he could become king. He was overwhelmed that he was not interested in taking the kingdom, and even instructions from Lord Krishna himself didn't seem to affect him. But then he went to the site of where grandfather Bhishma was. So he continued to hear the pastimes and activities and instructions from Krishna, and in this case, his elevated devotee. And over time, he could function well, in this case, for continuing to serve Lord Krishna. Of course, we know that even though no one dies, everyone is eternal, and you know, there's all kinds of things one might do on a psychological level, but that's not our talk here.
Vishnugada Prabhu, I have a question. Oh, sorry.
Well, I guess I have something to add there. Just is your question related to this, or is it a different question?
It's related to the lecture. It's related to the lecture. Go ahead.
This particular question, or the
No, Prabhu, go ahead.
I'll go. Okay. Now, I was thinking in terms of missing people when they're gone. I was thinking in terms of human nature. A lot of times we take our relationships and situations for granted. We think it's always going to be there. We fall into routines and patterns. We even saw this with devotees in their relationship to the temple during the coronavirus. You know, you just get into a routine. You think, okay, well, the temple's there. You know, the association with devotees are there. Sometimes, you know, difficulties, or even people are become inimical to certain situations at the temple, and then boom, all of a sudden, you know, there's restrictions. You know, there's separation, and people are saying, oh my gosh, I can't live without coming to the temple. I have to come. You know, and you know, maybe a couple of weeks ago, you're thinking, I may never come back to this place again. We fall into certain patterns, or we look and we see that you know, you just take things for granted, and then when they're gone, we realize that how special they are.
Well said. Well said. Well said.
And I
So
think,
that
like,
happens in our relationships as well.
We heard a couple of weeks ago in the Bhagavatam class, I think Charachandra Prabhu had said, when we focus too much on the details and not on the actual, I think that is why it is good to just slow down and understand why we are doing what we are doing. And also about what you were saying, I think like it says in Damodara Ashtakam, there has to be our effort, and then there has to be Krishna's mercy. How do we get over this sadness? We have to try. Some people just keep saying, I cannot, I cannot, I cannot. And as long as we say I cannot, we will not. Of course, we have to try. We have to understand that, you know, the person is gone, and we have to feel the sadness. We have to go through the sadness. I don't think you can brush it off and say, but then when you make that effort, then Krishna will shower his mercy and help you get through that difficulty. I think in everything that we do, we remember that we try, and then if it is his will, if it is his desire, he will help us through that.
my understanding is that the reason we feel the pain is because we are part and parcel of Krishna, and the Vipralamba Bhava is part of Krishna's, and we have that, and that is what brings us the pain because of that. Is my understanding correct, Prabhuji?
Well, we have material relationships, and I'm not saying that the material relationships, when they finish, that's Vipralamba Bhava. No, we have relationships within this world, and we have our relationship with Krishna, and then devotees, when we excavate our relationship with Krishna, that can become, we can experience it in separation, and these things are a small reflection of that. Does that make sense? It's not, these aren't necessarily Vipralamba Bhava, these experiences we have with regular people in the world, but it's a small, tiny part of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it is because that is there, that is why this reflection is there, right?
Yes. And
Yes.
but in the world, people, every people are they lose loved ones and relatives and friends and stuff like that. It happens, and it has people are lamenting, but it has nothing to do with devotional service in a sense.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Sure. Anybody else?
Vrindavaneshwar, you had the question?
No, that's okay. It's getting late. I'll ask another time.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Hare
Thank you.
Krishna. Have a good day.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Real quick, tonight we have an event on Zoom at 7:30. If anybody would like to join in, Haryashra Prabhu and Balabhadra Prabhu, they'll be speaking on the topic of racial disparity and Vaishnava views on this particular topic. So anybody interested, please tune in 7:30 this evening, the same Zoom channel. Thank you.
Same Zoom channel, same Zoom time. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.